Hello and welcome to Taller Together. I'm your producer, Werner Buertel, and I'm delighted to introduce the host of this podcast, Tamsin Lovell. Hello, Tamsin.
Hi, Werner, and hello to everyone joining us for this pilot episode of Taller Together. It is wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Tamsin. So, for our listeners, a very quick thank you to our partner, Artfundi, a comprehensive, secure art management platform supporting museums, galleries, and corporate collections. We'll share more about how Artfundi connects to today's conversation a little later. So, Tamsin, for somebody hearing Taller Together for the first time, how would you describe what this podcast is, who's it for, and how the name came about?
Taller Together is a podcast for the people who hold the art world up, from the artists, the foundation of it all, to the people working inside galleries, museums, foundations, corporate and bank collections, universities, cultural spaces, the people who make decisions, who care for objects, support artists, and keep institutions moving. The name has a personal history for me. It comes from a poem that I love. It's called The Concert by Edna St. Vincent Millay. And she describes coming back to her partner a little taller after attending a concert alone and being so uplifted by the music. And that idea stayed with me. When I opened my first gallery in 2010, I made that our internal principle, that every interaction should leave people a little taller than when they arrived. So when we created this podcast, we put that idea out there to name it A Little Taller, and the community kind of helped refine that down to Taller Together, because the real growth comes from shared experience, from listening and from building resilience as a sector.
Mm-hmm.
So Taller Together now sits inside the broader ecosystem of Armature, our new magazine about the structures that shape art.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us and see who can contribute to that and who we get to interview. Before we go any further, though, could you introduce who we are and what we're building, your journey into the art world, my role as a producer, and how all this connects to Armature and Artfundi's goals?
My journey hasn't been a straight one, more like a squiggle. I began in science and big data, working in research roles for corporates and multinationals. And then I moved into communication and marketing. Eventually, I opened 2 art galleries, and entering the art world was a shock in the best possible way. It was complex, demanding, unpredictable, and completely magnetic. I fell in love in a way that makes leaving this industry impossible. And out of that came Artfundi, a sort of left brain, right brain response to the sector and the problems I experienced in it as a gallerist. It's a technology company embedded in the art world, bringing tools that reduce administrative drag and help institutions spend more time with art and artists and their patrons. And you, Van, your background is such an asset to this podcast. Over a decade in film and TV production, documentaries, investigative journalism, international projects, audio design, and you bring something rare. You think in story. You value preparation and the role of community in shaping meaningful conversations. And your experience in another podcast, Uche Okeke, Coffee and Uche Okeke. So together, building Taller Together through Artfundi Media Lab, which you run, alongside Armature Magazine and Armature Talks coming soon, and the Armature Dispatch newsletter, which we'll release next year. They each explore the structures of the art world in their own way, but this podcast is where those ideas meet the people who live them. And it's a place where the thinking becomes human, and where shared experience and insight and support take center stage. It's different having a conversation versus writing an article or a Q&A interview. The podcast, I think, has a special role to play. But I love that it kicks off or brings to life something that has begun its exploration in written form within Armature Magazine.
I agree. It's always the thing that always baffles me about calling it an art industry is it's not really an industry. It's a zeitgeist of people being expressive and bringing their best foot forward in the most interesting and unique ways. And it's something you wouldn't necessarily even hear verbally. That's why I appreciate podcasts, is where people get the chance to put their best foot forward. They're not hiding anything and they're being their best self, what you would call a grindstone. It shapes, it's sort of compressed down into years of your life, and then you have this chance to reflect in the podcast, which is why I really love the name Taller Together. Is there's some element of bringing yourself, and you know yourself completely. There's nothing hidden about you that you bring, and you get the perfect point of reflection towards what you're building. And it's such a motivator at the end of the day.
You're so right. And unexpected things happen despite all the preparation for the podcast when you're in conversation with someone. Just, there's some magic there.
Exactly, yeah. When you look at the art world today, however, how would you describe what's really happening behind the scenes, the pressures, the trends, and how your own relationship with art has shaped that view?
Front of house, the art world often looks serene. I remember people saying to me, "Oh, what do you do in your gallery? No, it's so quiet." Galleries and museums feel spacious, they feel composed, but behind the scenes, it's that classic swan on the lake, calm on the surface, kind of frantic paddling underneath. There's a huge amount of invisible labor behind every exhibition, acquisition, or loan. Condition reports, insurance, data entry, provenance research, logistics, client care, digital engagement, all handled by small teams under pressure. Across the sector, I'm seeing real shifts, a push for transparency and accountability, complex questions around provenance and restitution, growing governance and compliance demands, and universal pressure to reduce admin so that teams can focus on the art and on people. You asked about my relationship with art. Well, it colors all of this. Years ago, I went to the Dali Museum in Figueras in Spain, and it lit a fire in me. Later in Dubai, I encountered Sadiq Jaish Al-Fraji's exhibition called Ali's Boat. It was a multimedia exhibition telling the story of a boy's dream journey to safety. And that experience stayed with me in an amazing way. And it was a reminder to me how art connects us through our shared humanity, even when we live completely different lives. And that's why it's so damn important. Both of those moments reminded me why the machinery behind the scenes matters. When it fails, those encounters don't happen. When it works, art reaches people and it reshapes how they understand the world.
I agree that we so heavily rely on, but it's also the skill to know how to make the machinery work as well that matters.
I don't think there's enough discussion about that often invisible machinery, about unpacking it and looking at how it works and discussing how it could possibly work better. Because we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all very passionate about art and about bringing it to people, about living in that world.
Given that landscape, how do you think about the role of that technology or any technology and leadership in making this work sustainable? And who are the kinds of voices we'll bring in to Taller Together?
I believe good technology should make things simpler and better, not more complicated. It should reduce friction and it should improve accuracy and create one secure source of truth for institutions that carry significant responsibilities. That's the design principle behind Artfundi, to support the full life cycle of a collection and lighten the administrative weight. Leadership and culture matter just as much, if not more. For me, culture is the operating system for results. In big companies, culture is inherited. As a founder, you have to consciously create it. And that's the magic of founding something new. Because we're remote at Artfundi, we're a distributed team, our values matter deeply. Fearlessness, care, synergy, voice, and results. Fearlessness to embrace change, care for colleagues, clients, artworks, and the data entrusted to us. Synergy is about avoiding silos, especially as we work remotely. Voice, everyone being heard, regardless of seniority, and results, always remembering why organizations rely on us. And in Taller Together, we're grounding the podcast in the voices inside Armature magazine. So each issue of Armature brings together artists, archivists, photographers, designers, curators, researchers, etc. People actively shaping the future of cultural work. And for our first issue, that includes, for example, Heidi Erdmann, whose work in photography and archives raises crucial questions about visibility and memory. She's doing some really exciting, groundbreaking work in that space. Mathieu Urbanek, whose as artistic practice spans photography, abstraction, digital motion. It's borderless. He's expanding what the visual experience can be. And Selma Uchokeke, offering an intergenerational perspective on stewardship and legacy and the afterlife of an artist's work. These are the people navigating change from the inside. Their insights aren't theoretical. They come from lived practice. And in Taller Together, because we've interviewed them already in Armature, we can build on that. We can extend those conversations and connect them to the realities of their cultural work today. It's really exciting to have that opportunity in different mediums and different formats to bring those voices out, because they are different in a written text format. You can digest them differently as an audience. You can get to know the people behind the words in a different context within the podcast. So it'll be interesting to see. It's an experiment, right?
Yeah, that's what art is essentially. It's trying to bridge the gap between what's so internal and what's vague for people and trying to give it an experience. It's definitely what podcasts do. It's something you put on, not knowing how much it'll impact anything you do. But that's why it's so exciting at the end of the day is connecting and seeing what's happening in the wider world. And that's definitely what we're trying to bring here. Connection from the art world. That's not just purchases and market landscapes and things like that, but what's deeper than that.
And have some fun while we do it.
Yeah, hopefully. Unfortunately, as we close this pilot, I want to focus a little bit more on what our episode is going to be for our listeners. What commitment would you like to make to listeners about what they'll gain from Taller Together and how they can stay connected?
My commitment is that Taller Together will stay grounded in real experience. Each episode will explore the work of caring for collections, supporting artists, leading teams, embracing technology, making decisions. I hope that each episode leaves you, the listener, a little clearer, a little steadier, and yes, maybe even a little taller in your own work. And I want to thank you, everyone who's already helped shape this podcast through feedback, naming ideas. And we'd love you to stay part of this. So subscribe and follow wherever you're listening. Share it with colleagues and friends, and visit armature-mag.art for deeper stories, essays, and the conversations that flow into this show. And let's see where this journey takes us.
Yes, and thank you, Tamsin. Thanks to everybody listening to this pilot episode of Taller Together. And we're excited to see where this community grows, because we want to grow with you. And until next time, bye.